Um, all right. Well, hi everyone. So welcome to our February meetup. So we made it this far. It's been already for our community globally. It's been quite a ride since I think April 2020. Community has been growing like crazy. And thank you for everyone's support as well. For supporting the community, and thank you for joining today. Very nice to have you with us. So we'll start our session with I'll just turn off my cam so we can maximize the screen. So during presentations, probably best to turn it off. All right, and yeah, so today's session we're having a few guests, and we'll get to actually agenda very shortly. But for now, I'll just kick off to the next slide. So today we're having WVD news and then Nerdio manager as well. So exciting session ahead for us all. Let's look at, so first of all, so video and sound check. I think you guys can hear me okay because we had a few chats there. And the visual, I think, was okay. So just wanted to see, so during the sessions, feel free to interact via chat, put your questions in, as long as, it's fine to actually put your pressing questions straight away so we can then answer them as we go. And during sessions or maybe in a Q&A as well. So I'll be monitoring the chat and I'll be raising these questions that were asked in the chat as well. So it's good if attendees can disable their video as well during the presentation and audio as well. But at the end of the official parts, we will be enabling our video, audio, who would like to ask questions and interact via video as well. Video stream, that's fine. All right, so session will be fast-paced, but it will be recorded as well. So we'll publish it on our YouTube channel also for you guys. So that's our session agenda today. So we're going through opening now, then we'll have our WVD news presented by Philip, and then we'll have Nerdio manager for WVD and demo with Q&A followed by Bas van Kaam. So for those who don't know maybe Bas, but Bas actually have been around Citrix deployments and as of late WVD deployments for quite some time. So it's really nice to have you, Bas, with us. So it will be a very nice session to actually watch. And then final part, 7:30 p.m. we'll have our official part ending, but we can stay and stick around if you like for further continued Q&A and open floor discussions. You could enable your video as well if you like. Alrighty, so next part. So we've got about myself, just a few pointers there. So mostly in IT, in managed services area, my experience lays. Cloud VDI technology advocate, and as of late, Microsoft solutions advocate as well, hence the interest in WVD. So at the moment, I'm an MD at Easy Print Australia, and expanding actually into APAC area as well. So I'm organizer for this group and a few more channels online on LinkedIn groups and things like that as well. So you can reach me via these contact details there. Okay, so could I just ask guys, before we actually carry on, would be interesting where everyone is joining from. So do you mind actually putting in chat, which is in the upper right corner, little bubble there? Do you mind actually punching in your city where you're joining from? That would be interesting to see. Yes, Dirk, welcome to every one of our sessions from Belgium. All right, Yes, Bas, of course, from Netherlands. Yes, and Brian from Vietnam, welcome. Enrico, Perth, yes, welcome, Enrico. Yeah, we've got a really multinational crowd here. Who did I miss? Did I miss anyone here in chats? Yes. All right, Jared. Welcome, Jared. And so, all right. Yes, we've got Cameron from New Zealand, from Christchurch. Welcome, Cameron. So Neil Manchester. Thank you for supporting our Australia New Zealand branch. And yes, Sean from Newcastle. Welcome. And anyone else? Yes, so that's pretty much all what I see in the chat, but I'm sure there'll be more coming. So guys, back to our slides. So yes, so we've got a group set up since, and it was started by Neil, actually, who is present here today, Stefan and Patrick. So thanks to you guys, we have this global community now, and which is awesome and growing at a very fast rate globally as well. And it's attracting a lot of actually interest globally, MSPs, vendors, and partners as well, which is awesome to see. These figures here on that slide are probably a little bit out of date, and I apologize, but you can find the exact figures, which probably be more current, right on this website here, wvdcommunity.com. And you can join also the Slack, our Slack channel there as well for all the professionals, for WD professionals. Okay, so let's see what to expect. So we'll meet once a month at the moment, and so it will be WD news and any hot topics. Recordings are available, and we'll see how we go. Well, with physical events, it will be, we'll have to play as we go. There's nothing yet certain in this kind of situation around the world. Community is for you guys, so if you have any content that you would like to present and share, so please do. We would like to hear from you, so you can just reach out to me, and I'll be happy to chat with you how we can accommodate your content in our presentations here. Alrighty. Well, so I'll just quickly mention at the end of my short part here of an intro, so that we've got a WD Tech Fest coming up, and this is going to be a really exciting event on 25th of February. So feel free to register, today, wvdtechfest.com. So there'll be a lot of technical content. So it will be very technical, supported and promoted by Microsoft MVPs. So not to miss opportunity to be there. And the next part, I just wanted to update you quickly on eZip cloud printing for WVD. There were recent updates in January, so there was a lot of updates on a hosted printer driver library. There were a high number of printer drivers for different vendors were updated, including like barcode and label printers, which are like Zebra, which are relevant, or Citizen for that matter, which are relevant for barcode printing for shipping warehouses and things like that. So yep, just yeah, that's all from my side actually, and I will be handing over to Philip now.
Thanks, Zane, and hi everyone.
Yeah, hi Philip. Good to have you.
I'll try to be brief, and we'll turn my camera off, so not to occupy precious real estate on your screens.
Sure.
I can share now. Thank you, Zane.
Yep.
All right, let me see if you can still see my screen. I've got that nice green liner, but GoToMeeting is not the application we use every day, sorry. Okay, so not to be the man between the major content and Now, I'll try to be brief and just a few highlights. And this is something that, I don't know, grabbed my attention. Obviously, there is so much happening in WVD little universe with service rapidly evolving and Microsoft friends pumping out updates and third-party services and providers, have their take and updating their products. Nerdio being one of the great examples. What I paid attention to is that now we have upcoming Windows Virtual Desktop certification specialty. I think the answer for us in this community is very simple. If you are an SME on WVD, just get certified. If you want to be one of the brave in the first wave, try it, why not? I think there's some beta discounts and beta exams are still available. Check it out. I would probably get that specialty as quickly as I can. And a nice segue to it, there are quite a few updated materials on MS Learn for WVD. It's nice to see the material evolving. It's nice to see some new additional sections and kind of more in-depth information on some topics. So go check it out. I'll drop the links that I've have on the screen in the chat window later, so you can just grab those links and explore the content I'm sharing. Another important one in my books is that Defender for Endpoint is now GA. And I'm sorry, we're kind of collecting the news for the whole month since the last event. Some of these things have happened a couple of weeks ago, and in WVD universe, it's like forever. But since the last WVD ANZ group, all those things have unfolded. With Defender for WVD, you can get up to 50 concurrent users per session host, which I think is a great number, and probably we shouldn't be putting more users per session host in general. If you check the management portal, Windows 10 with WVD appears as a new OS platform in the device inventory. So you have all the functionality with hunting, incidents, and kind of traditional alerting functionality available to you. The option to license is E5 licensing, mostly M365 security or overall M365 E5, but the great option to explore, and probably something that will work for majority of us, is just using Azure Defender on your session hosts. Right, next on the list, it was very nice for the community to share and for Microsoft friends probably to commission Forrester to do it for us, is the total economic impact of Microsoft Windows Virtual Desktop analysis compiled by Forrester. I would assume that majority of CIOs you're talking about, or high up decision makers, should see it, and they will take those numbers into account. What was very nice to see is that in a financial summary, risk-adjusted estimate for the payback period is just under 3 months. I don't think there is a lot of technological products out there who can boast that sort of a payback period. And again, this is maybe a little bit biased, but from an independent research body produced for everyone out there, for the community in general. Next on my list is that you can now easily get your hands on Azure Security Baseline for Windows Virtual Desktop. Right? The article says 30 minutes to read. When I see that sort of announcement in front of an article, I think Microsoft friends are probably onto something there. I think each and every one of us has to spend at least those 39 minutes and make sure that we respecting, if not everything 100%, but as close as possible to that recommended security baseline topics. All right, next one on my list is more clear guidance and sort of official information around Linux client support. We'll be talking about thin clients, right? And there is a summary of officially approved WVD clients on Linux is now available. So when you're assessing for your customers or for your organization which thin clients to purchase, or if existing fleet will function well with WVD, this is the place to go to right now. And to sum it up, apparently there is an official summary, and for the month of January it is published. That's an official Microsoft view on what's new in Windows Virtual Desktop. Go and check it out. You will probably see a couple of points that I brought up in that summary, but it's a place worthwhile visiting because you see kind of all the official updates, all those GAs that were released, summed up for the whole month for one of our favorite products. That's really it for me. I'll paste the links in the chat window so you can easily get your hands on that content directly. If you have any questions, as always, drop a line in the chat and I'll try to answer.
Awesome, thank you, Philip. Well, we've got a few minutes here for Q&A. Let's see if we can have anything here on the question side. So Philip, actually, yeah, feel free to turn your camera on if you like for Q&As. So let's see, Dirk is asking there something, right? FYI. So Dirk is saying FYI on the Azure Academy on YouTube. So we've got, there's already start of a course on the AZ-140 exam, right? Okay, thank you, Dirk. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's great. So yeah, any content in the exam preparation and kind of general learning is very welcome. So that's nice to know.
Yeah, and quite a few Microsoft events, and actually Microsoft Ignite is coming up soon as well. So quite a few events they're promoting, a few like certifications as well, and some of them even giving away foundations, from what I remember in previous ones. So foundation certificates can given away altogether. All right. Any other Q&A questions, guys? Anyone would like to bring anything up? I would like to check. I'm just checking if we've got any Microsoft presence here today at our session. We're usually having Roel from Microsoft Australia, and sometimes we're having Dave Weimer. So maybe not today. And all right, yes, thank you, Neil, for sharing the exams materials with us. I'm sure it will be handy for our members who would like to start it up and go through these. Okay, and let's see, Dirk. Dirk is saying for the foundations, you just have to follow an online free course. Yep. Well, yeah, that's it, to get a voucher as well. Thanks for that. Thanks for sharing. Thank you, Dirk. Okay, so well, if there are no other items, we could even have a head start with Bas, if Bas is ready.
I am, of course.
Right.
So I think you need to make me a presenter. Is that correct?
Yeah. I'll just send across the. Here we go. It's coming your way now.
Right. Okay.
Alrighty, it's over to you now. So you'll have a head start. Awesome. And I like the flags.
Oh. No.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. We can see your screen.
Yeah, I was trying to get this out of the way, but let me see how does that work. Ah, that's better. Yeah. All right. All right. So I was about to say good morning, everybody, but I guess for most of you, it's already the beginning of the evening. For some, it's still morning. I saw a couple of people from Belgium and, of course, Neil from the UK. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody. Thanks for having me on the show. My pleasure to present on Manager for WVD to you guys today. I have a very brief agenda. I'll start out with a brief introduction about myself, so some background information, if you will, and I'd like to spend most of my time doing one big demo, basically. So within the description of the session, I mentioned onboarding existing WVD environments, image management, auto-scaling, and all those types of things, which we'll cover during the demo one by one. And again, if there are any questions, or Zane, if you would like to interrupt me in between, all fine by me. We can also wait till the end. Again, all fine by me. So my name is Bas van Kaam. I'm currently the field CTO for Nerdio for the EMEA region. It now here still says the UK, but of course that's something that Neil will take over shortly as of the 1st of March, if I'm not mistaken. I live in a place called the Velsenbroek. I just mentioned Amsterdam in the chat because that's much easier to explain. It's like 15 minutes by car from Amsterdam, so very close by. I'm engaged. We are going to marry this year. Hopefully, if everything goes well with the whole COVID situation over here as well. It's now planned for July. So hopefully that can happen. We're both looking forward to that, of course. Small wedding, but you know, just some friends, some family, my kids, and so on. I'm a father of three kids, and we just had Max now turned 2. I have 3 kids, Julia, Sophie, and Max just turned 2 a couple of weeks ago. So pretty cool to have that little dude around as well. Pretty active in various communities, written and worked on a couple of books. I think I'm nearing up to 500 blog posts that I've written and redacted and things like that, to do a lot of presentations. Nowadays, it's mostly about Nerdio, and of course, it used to be face-to-face, real life, and so on. So hopefully that can happen again within now and let's say 6 months from now. Or am I being too optimistic? I hope not. Involved with a podcast as well, one of the founding members and one of the current board members, named the EUC Digest, or EUC Digest in general. We have some pretty cool things going on over there as well, so you might want to check that out. EUC focused, of course. Like to spend time with my kids, running as well, active runner, 4-5 times a week. We actually started a Strava group if you are in IT as well, so pretty cool to see what everybody else is up to also. And I'm also active on various other social channels as well. So if you would like to connect, please do. Always fun to see what everybody else is up to. Current MVP for enterprise mobility as well, meaning RDS and WVD as well, of course. So, and of course, we also have the Dutch Windows virtual desktop user group also, which I run together with Esther Bartel, Stefan Dingemans, and Niels Kok, just the 4 of us. Right, manager for WVD. I only have 2 or 3 slides, and then we'll jump right into the demo part. So this is sort of the only marketing slide that I have for you guys today, if you can call this marketing, of course. So manager for WVD is all about ease of management. That's one of the main things. We like to look at it that we enable over 80% of your IT workforce, perhaps even 90% plus, to be able to work with WVD and Azure on a daily basis, to do all of the optimizations, the auto-scaling part, management, building new stuff, maintaining it, image management, and you name it. As easy as it possibly can be. That's the idea behind it. You don't have to have any knowledge of the underlying Azure platform or PowerShell, no manual tasks in that sense. So the automation part is taken care of. I always like to say we try to hide the complexity for you, but as you'll see within the solution itself, you still have various options to work with PowerShell and other types of automation as well. So we try to hide it for you, but if you would still like to incorporate it, PowerShell primarily, then you still can in multiple ways, as you'll shortly find out. And of course, the feature gap, which is still there and probably will be going forward as well. The big difference between Microsoft and Nerdio is that Microsoft mainly focuses on their core technology. If you have a look at their roadmap as well, you can see that they're constantly improving all sorts of latency issues, you know, to their new data centers or regions and so on and so forth. MSIX AppAttach is getting a lot of attention as well. Their hosted shared management plane, of course, Windows 10 multi-session and so on and so forth. And Nerdio only focuses on, adding additional, value, of course, but additional features and functionalities on top of the native service. And that's what we do on a daily basis. And it goes really, really fast. Reducing Azure costs, of course, has everything to do with ease of management for one. So being able to save a lot of time with daily returning tasks, if you will, but of course also the auto scale engine and we have multiple built-in, by the way, also plays a major role in that with regards to the underlying compute and storage resources as part of your WVD deployment. And reinforcing existing security has everything to do, well, with the next slide as well, by the way, because of the way that the solution is built out of various platform as a service services deployed within your own tenant, so not multi-tenant in that sense, which also means you will have complete control. Also from a security perspective, so that's a good story to tell. Nobody else has access, you have full control, deployed and built through the Azure Marketplace, and because of that, it's also available in all regions worldwide. And this is what it would look like from a high-level perspective. The marketplace, various tenants with their subscriptions. You can have multiple subscriptions per, excuse me, per tenant, as you'll see within the solution as well. And here, down here, you can see Manager for WVD. It's a native Azure application, so it's built out of various services, platform as a service services, like I mentioned just now as well, making it extremely powerful, extremely flexible, scalable, of course. These are all services that Microsoft will take care of for you, so you don't have to maintain or manage anything about Manager for WVD itself. But it also means that it's very flexible from a development perspective. Like I just mentioned, it goes really fast, and we come out with new versions of our software at least once a month, and sometimes even multiple times per month, as we did in January, for example, as well. So let me hop over to my, let's see where it is, to my demo environment. So to get started, like I mentioned, Manager for WVD and other Nerdio solutions as well, by the way, are all available from the Azure Marketplace. So all you have to do is search for Nerdio. You don't even have to go into the marketplace, as you can see. Select Manager for WVD in this case, because that's what we're talking about, of course. Click Create. Have a look at the videos if that's something you would like to do. You can, of course, fill in the fields, click Next, and then the only choice you really need to make is, do you want to make use of the automation part, as it says here, so yes or no. If you click yes, then we would like you to disable multi-factor authentication and conditional access, but only for the installation or during the installation, and then afterwards it can be turned on again right away. So that will take 30 to 45 minutes, depending on the region you're deploying into, how busy that region is, the time of day, and those types of things. But if you, for whatever reason, do not want to do that, and by the way, you can also use a temporary account, for example, because it's not needed afterwards, you can throw it away. So that's an option too. But if you do not want to disable multi-factor authentication or conditional access, we can also do it via PowerShell. We support the older and the new model, so you can run a PowerShell module from your own PC, basically. And then, of course, you will be challenged for multi-factor authentication a couple of times, 3 or 4 times. So that's, you know, it will work in exactly the same way. It will just take a bit longer, but the process will almost be the same. And of course, the end result will be exactly the same. So that's basically all you need to do. I always say to, well, basically everybody, it's pretty boring actually, because it almost never goes wrong. And you just have to wait for 30 to 45 minutes, and then you'll end up in, well, the graphical user interface, which you are looking at now. So before getting started, of course, this will first be empty because you won't have anything built yet or onboarded. And that's where I would like to start as well. So onboarding existing WVD environments and have a look at the, well, the base configuration, the default configuration of Manager for WVD to get started. So like I mentioned, it's single tenant. It's actually a split tenant solution, if you will. You can add in multiple tenants, but you will always have one main tenant responsible for identity, as you can see up here as well, meaning authorization, authentication, those types of things. Your primary AD tenant will be responsible for that. You can add in multiple, as you can see here also, but those can only be used for VM purposes, for example. You can, however, add in multiple subscriptions per tenant if that's something you would like to work with, so you definitely have that flexibility. Now below you see linked networks and resource groups. So linked meaning you can link additional networks and resource groups, of course. I'll show you that. Also pretty straightforward. So once it stops loading, you will see all of the available resource groups within your tenant, basically. Very easy to do, and it works in exactly the same way with adding in resource groups. Now, if you already have an existing WVD deployment, you probably guessed it already, all you need to do is link the network and the resource group that WVD environment is deployed into. Then you hop over to workspaces, assuming it's a newer version of WVD, of course. Do a page refresh and you'll see it pop up almost instantly. Here there will be a button saying something like associate this workspace with manager for WVD, and that's all you need to do. And do the same thing with the underlying host pools and the host within those host pools. And from that moment on, you will be ready to manage that existing WVD environment with manager for WVD as well. Just 1 second, guys.
Very cool so far, Bas. Guys, yeah, if you have any questions coming up, feel free to put them in the chat already, so Bas can have some Q&A questions and they can read out. Yep. So please go ahead, Bas, over to you.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, just took a sip of water. You know, it's still early over here. I just had my first cappuccino, so my voice needs to get going, if you know what I mean. But I'd rather not cough on on the recording, so that's why I muted for just a couple of seconds.
All good.
All right, so again, hop over to workspaces, do a page refresh, and again, assuming it's a newer version, and it will pop up, and you will be able to associate those machines with manager for WVD. And of course, it works in exactly the same way if it's tenants that you are still working with or in a customer environment as well, by the way. So if you look at integrations on the Nerdio, there are a couple of things around running the Nerdio environment. Not too exciting to go over now, except perhaps for the WVD object model. So here you can set it to hybrid or just being able to manage fall or spring. So either one. And hybrid means, of course, that you will be able to manage both tenants and workspaces from the same management interface, as you can see here as well. And if you look at integrations, we have multiple coming up as well. So this is also where sort of the automation fun starts, if you will. So first of all, you can work with multiple Active Directories. You can add in as many as you would like. Technically, you can synchronize multiple Active Directories with your Azure AD environment as well, as you might know. And all this, including Active Directory, so all this basically is configurable. And of course, I will show you that as well on a per host pool basis also. So you could have a different Active Directory per host pool, for example, or just change the organizational unit per host pool. But again, we'll get into that a bit later on. As you can see, Azure files, Azure NetApp files, fully integrated, very easy to set up, very easy to configure, including the joining to AD domain part. All you need to do is fill in the wizard, select the proper configuration from the drop-down menus, and then everything that needs to be done on the underlying platform as well, meaning the Azure platform, of course, to get it up and running will be done for you. And you'll see it pop up right here. And one of the things you would then be able to do, for example, use an Azure Files location for FSLogix Profile Storage, direct integration here as well. And again, this can all be changed per host pool as well, so you can have different FSLogix Profile Container configurations with regards to the registry options or different storage locations and so on and so forth. But this would be the default configuration, and this will become a bit more clear once we hop over to the properties under the various host pools also. AppAttach, I'll get to that a bit later on. We have two different monitoring solutions, and by the way, a couple of these things, like the direct integration with the Azure WVD monitor that we've now built in as well, this will all come out this week. So perhaps tomorrow, the day after, by the end of this week, this will all be live. So meaning if you would deploy Manager for WVD right now, a couple of these things that I'm showing you and telling you about now, like notifications, for example, or the Azure Monitoring Insights part, won't be available just yet. But of course, this is also the environment that we use for, well, of course, for demos, but also for product development, for Q&A and those types of things. So that's why you will see a couple of things that are still being worked on. REST API, if you would like to use that in any way, we have a bunch of documentation on that as well, of course. And NetApp files is the same thing as with Azure files. It's just a wizard that you need to walk through, basically. So now, let's say you might have added a couple of, one or multiple networks, resource groups holding an existing tenant. Well, no need to worry, because we can migrate those tenants over to workspaces, so from non-ARM to ARM as well. We've had this built in for over 6 months or so. So enabling you to first select your host pool of choice, your destination workspace, if you have multiple, of course, and choose what you would like to do with your existing user assignments as well. So this would basically mean transferring the metadata as part of your host pool to one of the newer workspaces. Goes really fast, just a couple of seconds, so you'll be good to go. But of course, we also enable you to migrate the underlying VMs with that also. So one or multiple at the same time, for example, how many things are allowed to fail before this whole process will be halted. And all this can be scheduled, for example, at night, beginning of the evening, whatever you would like to do as well. And then if it runs into any active sessions still on those machines, users will first be notified. And of course, this can be freely filled in. And then 10 minutes after that, or 50, 30, whatever you would like to configure here, the migration will take place. So good to know. Then if you hop over to your workspaces, you will find your host pools, of course, in here, but they'll actually be under static host pools. And that's because the difference between a static host pool and a dynamic host pool is pretty simple, actually. With a static host pool, you would add in machines manually and remove machines manually. So not using PowerShell or anything like that, but using this graphical user interface. And with a dynamic host pool, and that's something I would like to show you guys as well, we have that backed up by our Autoscaling engine, which will take care of that for you. And since Microsoft doesn't really support any advanced autoscaling, that's why you'll see those migrated tenants pop up under static host pools with no current autoscaling possible. But as you can see, we can convert those to dynamic, so enabling you to almost instantly use one of those static host pools or transfer it into a dynamic and then instantly use autoscaling as well. But I'd like to start at the beginning. First, create a workspace just to show you guys how that process works and how quickly it goes as well. Just give it a name, give it a friendly name. This is what your users will be able to see, of course, so give that a bit more thought. Perhaps a description as well, a resource group and a location to deploy this workspace into. Click OK. This is just an empty container, of course, so it happens really fast, just a couple of seconds, as you can see on the screen as well. And now we are able to add in one or multiple host pools. And of course, like I just mentioned, I would like to show you guys a dynamic host pool. So again, you can give it a name, description, and then here you would need to choose what kind of desktop experience you would like to offer to your users. So the top one meaning a hosted shared environment, followed by published applications, basically remote apps, a single user meaning a VDI type deployment in a one-to-one relation, and this would be non-persistent desktops. And this would mean personal assigned persistent desktops. And we have a separate autoscaling engine for those as well, which I'll show you also. The name prefix, this is a nice one as well. This is used by the Autoscale engine to give all of your machines as part of creating a dynamic host pool, but also once it adds machines and removes machines, unique names. What it will do, it will use your name prefix. It will also generate an alphanumeric string and it will append that to the name prefix. And that's how all of your machines will get unique names. And the nice thing about that is it's also able to reuse those names that it has given to the machines before. So let's say user demand increases, the machine or a machine is added, it gets a name. Later on, user demand decreases, the machine is removed again, perhaps even completely destroyed, depending on what type of machine it is, but we'll get to that in just a couple of seconds. Then added again because user demand has again increased. Machine is built again, added to the host pool, and then it will be able to reuse that same name it had a couple of hours before, a couple of days before, perhaps even a week before, and so on. So, you know, that helps with still being able to apply GPOs, certificates, whitelisting, and all those types of things. Of course, you need to select the network to connect to, a desktop image to be applied to those machines. And here we have a lot of options to choose from, but of course, we'll get to desktop management, importing, managing, applying, and so on and so forth in a bit more detail later on. So after the autoscaling part, so I'll just select one for now. You can work with any type of VM size available on a native platform as well, together with the various OS disks that are available for the various VM sizes. Of course, a resource group to deploy this dynamic host pool into. And here you're also able to quickly assign users or groups of users. And I always do and show that afterwards because you will have a broader, better overview. Let me click OK. This will just take a bit longer as compared to creating a workspace because that was still an empty container. And now it's loading up the configuration page of the Autoscale engine. And that's also where we would configure how many machines we would like to have part of this host pool. There we go. So as you can see, disabled by default, turn it on with the flip of a switch. And this is the information we just had a look at. We just configured or selected, if you will, together with the option to reuse host names. Monthly estimated cost, minimum and maximum with regards to the underlying compute and storage cost as part of your WVD environment, which make up like 70 or 75%, but I'm sure you know of your environment, so pretty important to keep an eye on that. And it also means that everything that you do here, select, configure, or fill in, for example, if we change 5 to 2, you will see the prices change as well. Will have a direct impact on those monthly costs. So of course, your actual costs, monthly costs, will be somewhere in between. But of course, that's because you never can predict user demand beforehand on a weekly, monthly basis, and so on and so forth. So let's hop over to configuring the Autoscale engine. We'll start out with the host pool sizing. So here we can tell the Autoscale engine that the base host pool capacity needs to be, for example, 2 machines, as in this particular case. And of course, you can make it 20, 50, 80, whatever you would like to fill in. Now, this means there will always be 2 machines as part of the host pool. And here we can say one of those machines needs to be in a booted state, meaning the other one will be shut down. And then if user demand increases for whatever reason, the other machine of the 2 will be booted as well. If these machines are both running and it's still not enough, you can tell the Autoscale engine to build a couple of machines on top of the base host pool capacity as well. So meaning 4 machines as the max host pool size in this particular example. These machines will be built from scratch and completely be removed once no longer needed, of course. And these are the machines that will be booted and shut down. And again, 2 machines to start out with, 1 in a booted state and 1 will be shut down, and the other one will be booted once needed. Which brings me to the scaling logic. So here we can work with CPU usage, average active sessions, available sessions, and we are working on some other stuff as well. And by the way, before I forget, you see all of these exclamation marks, and it will tell you exactly what it is that you are working on, that you are configuring, where you can go to for additional information. Just think of it as sort of the first line help desk built in specifically for Manager for WVD. It helped me out a lot well, during my first couple of weeks and months as well. As you can see, we have those built in all over the place. So very handy to use those. Now, if we take CPU usage for or as an example, you can tell the engine it needs to add 1 machine or multiple, of course, if utilization exceeds 65% for 5 minutes or longer, and do the same thing with removing 1 or multiple hosts if it drops below 40% for 5 minutes or longer as well, configurable, of course. So very handy to have. But you can also scale in, restrict the Autoscale engine from scaling in between certain times, or vice versa. Tell it to only scale in and stop machines between certain times. So if we would pick, for example, 6 p.m. beginning of the evening until, let's say, 6, 7 a.m. in the morning, depending on your time zone, of course, then now it's only allowed to shut down machines, scale and remove machines between these hours, which of course also means that vice versa during office hours, it will leave those machines alone, meaning it will still create new machines and boot machines when user demand increases, but it will not shut them down, because the idea would be users are active, they will be productive, have active sessions, and you do not want to bother them with, shutting down a couple of machines, if that would be at all possible to start out with, of course. You can still do that if that's something you would like to configure, but this is something that we see in practice used quite often.
Nice, very nice, Bas. I've got some questions. We've got questions coming up in the chat there. I'm not sure if it's a good time to throw them in.
Sure, yeah, please do.
Yeah.
Let me take a sip of water in between.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Dirk is asking here, I suppose it will only be possible to remove the host if there are no active users on it.
Yes, so that brings me to the scale and aggressiveness, because that's something that we then combine with scaling and shutting down machines. So here we basically tell the Autoscale engine how it needs to react to machines that are perhaps empty, need to be put in drain mode, and those types of things. So I'll get to that in just, well, seconds, if there are no any other questions at this time, of course.
Yeah, there are a few more from Philip. Where the cost is coming from? Is it my actual or just RRP?
The cost, sorry, I didn't.
Pricing.
So
Pricing.
these prices, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, so these would be the list prices from the Azure platform itself. So this is without any discounts that you might have
Right.
being a CSP, for example, or yeah. So the Azure cost API, if you will, in the background.
Yeah. So that's the RFP cost. Okay. And Bas, one more. With the very beginning, let's assume I'm an MSP. Do I integrate Nerdio with my primary tenant first, and then I onboard my customer tenants? What's the model? That wasn't clear.
Yeah, very good question. So Manager for MSP, that's a completely separate product that we released just about 2.5 weeks ago. So definitely a good question. And if we have time, and I'm sure we do, at the end of the demo on Manager for WVD, I can show you a couple of things around Manager for MSP as well. That's now in public preview. So different model, that would mean it's also multi-tenant, a deployment within the tenant of the MSP. And from there on, you would be able to manage multiple dozens, if not hundreds of tenants from all of your customers and clients and so on and so forth. Is that okay?
We're talking about WVD customers, not just regular Azure customers.
WVD, but also we can also manage infrastructure as a service virtual machines as well.
No, understood. So that MSP manager level would be both traditional infrastructure on Azure and WVD as well for multi.
Definitely, yes, including user management, group user management, user management, group management. It's sort of a shell around Active Directory as well, so you can reset passwords and all those types of things, make new users, new groups, and you name it.
Yep, understood. Thank you.
All right. Anything else?
No, basically that's all for now.
Okay,
let's over to you.
Then. Yeah,
thank you.
Sure. So again, just a short recap. Here we tell the scaling engine that it's only allowed to remove and scale in machines as of 6 p.m. until 7 or 8 a.m., whatever you would like to configure, of course, in the morning. And then we can combine that with scaling aggressiveness. So that means you can set it to high, medium, and low, meaning as soon as the Autoscale engine is allowed to stop machines, remove machines as of the configure times, it will do so according to these rules, if you will. If you set it too high, machines will first be put in drain mode. Then it will look for empty machines first, scale those down, shut those down. And then it will follow the route of hosts with the least number of active sessions and continue down that path. And if it shuts down machines with active sessions, it's sort of the same thing as with the migration I showed you guys in the beginning. Users will be notified, and then 10 minutes after that, 15, 30, whatever you would like to configure again, the machine will be actually shut down or scaled in. If you set it to medium, sort of the same thing. Drain mode first, empty machines first, but after that, it will only look for machines with disconnected sessions, and it will leave all of the other types of machines and types of sessions, I should say, alone. And if you set it too low, again, drain mode, and it will only look for machines that are empty, and it will leave all of the other machines alone, so with disconnected sessions and active sessions. So this is how you would configure, like I always like to mention it as the fine line between cost optimization and user experience, because user experience, has to do with keeping a host active for outside of work hours, for example, in the weekends. And by the way, you can always set this to 0 as well if you would like to go for 100% cost optimization, for example. So that would be possible as well. In between, we have the pre-staging of hosts. So you can tell it to boot up one or multiple machines at a certain time on certain days. So let's say from Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. in the morning is fine. Well, here it says 7, of course, so let's make it 7. You can have one or multiple machines ready to go in a booted state, meaning to take care of login storms, boot storms, and so on and so forth. And by the way, all this perfectly works together with ephemeral OS disks as well. I have a session about that coming up shortly also. A very excellent use case to use together with Manager for WVD. So if you're not familiar with that, definitely look into ephemeral OS disks as well. Can potentially save you a lot of cash on the underlying storage, for example. Auto heal broken host, something that we've built in around 2 months ago. Pretty cool feature. We have been getting a lot of positive feedback on this. So as you might know, the WVD agent can give back certain statuses, and here we then would like to focus on, well, the negative ones, if you will. You can add in multiple if you like. Together with no active sessions, no sessions, and active sessions, you basically create some sort of a rule. And then if something like this happens on one of your machines, you can tell the Autoscale engine how to react. So restart the machine multiple times with so many minutes in between, for example, and or remove and recreate or leave as is. And this will definitely solve your issue with regards to the agent that might be some sort of, or give you some sort of a vault, because once the machine is removed, recreated, it will be unjoined, rejoined to the domain. Of course, the image will be reapplied, your agents will be reinstalled and reconfigured, and so on and so forth. So definitely good to have this. Of course, users will still call the help desk probably, but in the meantime, this issue will be resolved for you. Now, this is all still part of configuring a dynamic host pool. So we set 2 machines as part of the base host pool capacity. So let's see what happens when I click save. It will now kick off the, first of all, the auto scale process. As you can see here, it forces it to start. And then it sees, hey, I need to have 2 machines as part of this host pool. There are none in here, so let's build 2. And it's now building up those 2 separate jobs, basically, as you can see here. So you can always have a look at the details. Very smooth,
Bas.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, while it's building, we've got a question here from Dirk again. So the 100% cost optimization, as you call it,
yes.
This can be done by not setting the scale restrictions times?
Well, let me get back to this in just 1 or 2 seconds. So I'll show you that again and perhaps explain it a bit more clearly. Yeah, no problem.
All right.
So
awesome.
again,
Thanks.
Yeah, sure. So you can see exactly what happens at what time, also by which user, if it's a manual task, for example, together with his or her email address here, and this will auto refresh and so on and so forth. And as you can see, this can all be hidden. These types of messages, you can always go back to loggings or logs, have a look at the last 30 days. All of the types of tasks that Manager for WVD can do for you, automated or manually, of course, like adding in hosts, which we are doing now. And if you look at a completed one, you have all of the steps, and of course it does exactly the same thing when it removes a machine. So you can see it being unjoined from the domain, that the NIC is completely removed, deleted, and so on and so forth. And as you can see, for troubleshooting purposes, we also enable you to directly download all of the loggings from the underlying VM, and this is something that can be done on the VM directly as well, by the way. So there we go. More and more being added as we move forward, by the way. So let me hop over to, let me hop over to an existing one so I can show you that again. So this would also be how you would go back into your auto scale configuration. By the way, you can always change it. So that would be this part. So here you would say 2 machines as part of the base host pool capacity, and these will then be both shut down if you set this to 0. But it would still be allowed to build new machines on top. And of course, you can set that to 0 as well. Just depends on your scaling needs, of course. So this was what the question was about. Is that correct?
Okay, so Dirk's question, okay, the 100% cost optimization, as you call it, this can be done by not setting the scale restrictions times?
Well, what I was saying is that the stop and remove option that you see in the scaling option. You have the scaling logic there. You have the stop and remove. Is that stop and remove also working during the normal hours or only during those scaling restriction hours?
Ah, right. This part you mean? Yeah. So here you tell the auto scale engine that it's only allowed to stop and remove machines, scale in machines between these hours. So that means that outside of these hours, it will not remove or scale in any machines. It will still build new machines if those are needed and depending on what you have configured here, of course, but it will not shut down or remove any machines. Make sense?
Which means that the line which is just above, stop and remove one host, is not used during, let's say, normal business hours in your example.
Correct. And it depends on how you configure it. Of course, you can go and you can take any route, but that's what this now says. That's correct.
Okay, because this means that if you get, let's say that you get a peak around noon, and at 2 o'clock that peak goes down, that if machines are empty, they will not be removed from the pool and you will still be paying the cost of it.
Yeah, that's correct. That's exactly in this example, but you can configure it in any way that you would like, of course. So if you think about lunch, for example, you know, a lot of people, let's say between 11:30 and 1 or 1:30, so a time cap of an hour, hour and a half, perhaps even 2 hours, people might leave for lunch, leave their sessions well, inactive basically. You can still, of course, configure it in such a way that those sessions will be shut down and scaled in and so on and so forth. But it will probably be too big of an, I wouldn't say issue. Yeah, it's definitely not an issue. But is it worth to bother your users between lunch to be able to shut down those machines for like 15 or 30 minutes or whatever the case may be? That's something you could ask yourself, and it also depends, I guess, on how big the environment is, how many machines you we're dealing with. If it's 100 machines times 50 minutes, then of course it can still be a lot of compute. I would agree.
Yeah. So that means if you want to do it 24/7, then the stop and remove time should be something like from 0 hours until 24 hours.
Yeah, or just don't configure it at all. Then it will continuously look for machines that it is allowed to shut down depending on the scale and aggressiveness that you've configured, for example.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Yeah, sure, no problem. All right, so that's autoscaling for hosted shared environments. Let me hop over to an autoscale page of personal assigned desktops. As you can see, it looks different, but of course the end result will be exactly the same. You won't have any machines running that do not need to be running. So outside of office hours, for example, in some cases at night, and so on and so forth. Here we work with power of aggressiveness instead of scaling aggressiveness, but what's in the name? It does exactly the same thing. No drain mode, of course, because these are machines in a one-to-one relation, so VDI type deployment, if you will, like I mentioned at the beginning as well. But it can still be set to high, medium, and low, and it means exactly the same thing, meaning if you set it to high, it is also allowed to shut down a machine with an active session on it. And of course, the user will first be notified, as we always do. And if you set it to medium, it will only shut down machines with an inactive session or a disconnected session. And if you set it to low, it will only shut down machines with no sessions or inactive sessions, or an inactive session. It's a single, of course, not a plural as in the previous example. Power of timing, you can set it to continuously, which is something you would like to do for cost savings, of course. So meaning depending on the hours that you configure, the autoscale engine is allowed to continuously look for machines that it is allowed to shut down depending on the power of aggressiveness that you set here. So then you also need to keep in mind that if you set this to continuously, for example, and if you would set this to high, then it is also allowed to continuously shut down machines with an active session on it after office hours. So that's probably not the best way to go, because you will constantly bother users being active outside of work hours. So probably set it then to medium, meaning it's allowed to shut down machines with a disconnected session. Now, and even if a user would forget about logging off or shutting down his her own machine, you would still have your disconnected times, your idle times, and so on and so forth. So eventually the machine will be shut down at night during the earlier part of the evening, perhaps even. And those session disconnect times, idle times, whatever you would like to call them, there are multiple, of course, can be configured on a per host pool basis as well. And that's something I will show you also. This can also be combined with one of our roles that we've built in. So this would be role-based access control within Manager for WVD. So good to know and good to see as well. Of course, we have multiple roles built in, as you can see here. Small differences between the two. We have like a 1-minute read KB article explaining those differences. But here I would like to focus on the end user role. Now, if a user has a personal assigned desktop within Manager for WVD, then that user, together with the end user role, of course, then that user will be able to log into Manager for WVD and have complete control over that machine, meaning he or she will be able to stop, start, and restart that machine, and also to log off their own sessions. If that user is also part of a hosted shared desk pool, host pool, for example, he or she will also be able to log off their sessions within that host pool also. No stops or startings or restarts, of course, because you will have multiple users being affected. But that's something additional that we've built in also. Right. Any more questions about that part while I take a sip of water before I hop over to image management?
We had no more questions here in the chat, Bas, unless somebody would like to voice it. We just have a few moments. And yeah, all right, well, I think we can carry on to the next part.
No problem.
Yeah, thank you, Bas.
Okay, image management. Multiple things we can do here as well. Always fun to demo this part also. So let's start with the import options. So how do you get an image or a VM into Manager for WVD? And by the way, if for whatever reason you have one or multiple images you do not want to import, of course, you do not have to do that. If you create a host pool like we did about 15 minutes ago, you saw that you could directly select your Azure custom images from the underlying Azure platform as well, together with shared image gallery images that you might have. So you don't have to import those, but of course it has the added advantage of being able to manage everything from the same management interface like we are looking at today, and of course being able to leverage the management options that I'm about to show you also. But first, let's look at some of the import options. Now, if you would like to import an existing VM that you might have purposely built for this purpose, or perhaps it's a VM you might have been using for a couple of weeks or months, doesn't really matter. All it needs to be is a managed disk, so we can copy over the SAS URL into here, and that's basically all you need. Have a look at some of these options, of course, also important. And as you can see down here, a lot of additional details that we've added to make managing images and WVD in general, of course. You'll see some of this come back in other places within the solution as well, as easy as it possibly can be. So it's all about, smoothing the management experience, if you will. Of course, you don't have to use all these types of things when doing image management or whatever you would like to do or are doing within Manager for WVD. It's just that the options are there. If you would then have made your configuration choices, click OK, then the import will take about 20-25 minutes. It depends a bit on how big the VM is, which region you are importing it into, and so on and so forth. So typical Azure stuff, you could say, not within the reach of Nerdio, of course. Now, if you look at the library options that we have, it becomes even a bit more advanced. So first of all, you can import the ready-made Azure Marketplace images, for example, as you can see here. And this is the one I selected to build out the host pool we just had a look at. Your Azure custom images. And like I mentioned, the integration with the shared image gallery is here as well. So again, do the import. Will take 15, 20, 25 minutes. It depends a bit. And as you can see here, some of the same options that you saw on the previous screen as well. Now, if you have imported one or multiple images, you can do different things. So first of all, you can power it on, choose to make a backup before you continue for one or multiple weeks. And then if the retention period expires, it will only throw away the backup and it will leave the original image intact. And then if you've done that multiple times throughout the last couple of weeks, for example, you also have versioning. So you can choose restore and go back one or multiple versions in time, basically. So if it doesn't work out within test, production, whatever the case may be, you'll be good to go, as you can see. So if you have powered it on, this button will turn into shut down and set as image. It will say something like that. You can use the IP address or the name of the VM, for example, or the image, I should say, to RDP into it or connect to it any way you would like. Make your changes, install software, apply patches, security updates, do whatever you would like to do. Then come back to Manager for WVD, hit the set as image button again, and then all of the ceiling sys prepping will be done for you, which is something you can do partly manual as well, for example. So if you click set as image, you can also set off a whole, automation street, if you will. As you can see here, everything can be scheduled weekly, daily. So if you set this to weekly, and then, for example, to Saturday, if you have an external piece of software like SCCM or whatever you would like to use, it can be anything, which you would like to use to auto update your images, let's say on a weekly basis, like I'm configuring here, you could do that also. So that would mean you would have separate software updating your images, and then you can build up a whole schedule, as you can see here as well, updating your images and then automatically apply it to various host pools as well. And that's something I will show you in the next part, by the way. And then if you have made updates to your image, you will also be able to use a change log, as you can see here as well. So write down the changes that you've made, why you made them, and so on and so forth. Helpful for colleagues, and that's that type of thing. And a couple of other things, of course, to have a look at. Of course, you can do the restore manually, like I showed you, backup manually, I should say. You can delete it, you can clone it. So this is what we used before. We had the backup functionality built in before. And this would clone it over to another region as well if you would select a network within another region, for example. And these are the same options that you saw with importing an existing Azure VM or importing images from the Azure library also. And again, cloning takes about the same time as importing an existing image, for example. Right, so then if you hop over to an existing host pool, then you would choose the host menu, resize, reimage. And then here you would be able to, for example, pick the desktop image that you might have just updated, like I just showed you. Or if you have any images that you did not import it into Manager for WVD, like I mentioned at the beginning of this section as well, because here you can see Azure custom images. Well, you saw 4 images imported on the previous screen. These are a lot more and are directly accessible from here as well. And this would work in exactly the same way. Well, you saw that as well, but it has been a while, like 30 minutes or so, when building out a new host pool, for example. You can also choose to resize your VM OS disk at this point if that's something you would like to do, how many hosts you would like to have re-imaged at the same time. So let's say 5 or perhaps even 20, 25. If it's a 100 host pool, for example, how many things are allowed to fail. So this is the same as with the migration part where we started out with at the beginning. And this can all be scheduled as well and even be repeated. So daily, weekly, monthly, if that's something you would like to do with reapplying the same image over and over again, for example. If it runs into any active sessions, again, the messaging mechanism applies, which we have covered a couple of times already. Now, as part of this, we will leave the VM NIC alone, meaning DNS won't change, IP address will stay the same. And of course, we will be able to reuse the host name, like I mentioned, as part of the autoscale process as well. So you don't have to worry about that also. And if you might be looking for something similar, but just as a reboot schedule, basically, so just go to a restart. So this would do exactly the same thing. You can schedule that as well, but then without reapplying the image over and over again. So just a reboot schedule for your hosted shared environment, for example. Very handy to have that as well. Any remarks or questions about this part?
Bas, I just had a question actually here. So they're all Windows 10 images here, right? But or you use other ones, other systems too?
I'm not sure. These are Windows 10, but you can use any image that you would like, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so you can load
so everything
anything.
that's supported by WVD, I should say, works within Manager for WVD as well.
Okay, awesome. And
yeah.
I just really, yeah, no, that's awesome. I really enjoy how intuitive it is and thoughtful, as in, you know, leaving notes for your colleagues as to what changes have you applied to the image and things like that. So I think it's an awesome functionality there,
cool.
all in built. Yeah.
Yeah, that was actually, that came from various community feedbacks that we got. You know, I always ask for feedback, and we all do, of course, and we get that from customers and partners as well throughout the year. Well, it's sort of part of my role as well. You know, I collect all of the feedback, share it within Manager, within Nerdio with the right people, and then, you know, let's see what we can do going forward. Put it on a roadmap within a couple of weeks' time, a couple of months' time. But if there are good suggestions, like the changelog, of course, is, and also like tagging resources was also one of the things we heard a lot. People would like to be able to tag the resources directly from within Manager for WVD for, you know, billing and cost purposes, for example. So that's something we then build in as well. So that's sort of how it works. So if you have any good suggestions about anything within Manager for WVD or around anything surrounding Nerdio in general, you know, let us know, and you know, we will work with it, basically. Not always, of course, but usually we do. If it's a good idea, then, you know, it helps. All right.
Wow. Yeah. Over to you again.
Yeah, sure thing. So assigning users to a host pool would work like this. So I mentioned with the small screen, I always show and do that afterwards because you will have a better overview. Well, here you go. Multiple filter options to work with. Just search for users, groups of users, and then assign or unassign them, whatever you would need to do. And as you can see here, we have user sessions. I don't think we have any sessions at this time, but here you would be able to shadow sessions, send them messages, log off those sessions, disconnect those sessions, and so on and so forth as well. So a couple of other things I would like to highlight. So first of all, we talked about scripted actions, or it has come by a couple of times. So here you would be able to manage your own scripted actions library. These are all of the ones that we added for you. So predefined, if you will, you can always view them, apply them, clone them. So then reuse, for example, the code, alter it a bit, or come up with something of yourself by adding in your own scripted action, for example. So that definitely works as well. And I'll show you how to apply this on a per host pool level in the next section, basically. So very straightforward, very simple concept, but very powerful to have.
Bas, sorry to barge in here. So Philip is asking shadow sessions. Do they interact with user desktop? And what's the mechanism and protocol?
Right. Well, let me get back on the exact mechanism. So I'll look that up for you guys. But yeah, you can interact. You know, for example, to take over or just only in view mode. I mean, you would need to ask permission of the end user, of course, and so on and so forth.
Okay. Very nice. Okay.
Let me hop over to.
So Bas, I guess my question also would be, so if I'm running the manager from the interface that you are demoing to us right now from my workstation, you know, how exactly that's going to work? Because I don't have, let's assume, you know, I'm not on a VPN, I don't have direct line of sight from my workstation to the session host.
Yeah, right. So that will work via RDP, for example. It will pop up a separate window for that outside of Manager for WVD, if that makes sense.
Yes, but not fully. So trying to understand, right? I'm using my laptop on my home network. I'm not connected to a corporate network. And I want to interact with a user session on WVD session host. How that RDP connection will happen? The session host doesn't have external IPs. My machine is not on the corporate network. I don't have direct line of sight.
Well, it will shadow the WVD session if that's what you mean. It will not shadow the user's laptop at home. That's what you mean, or not? Yeah,
no. So that's sorry. It is an important question to cover on the operational side. I'm pretty sure that others will second this request as well. So what I'm trying to understand, as you know, we're all working remotely, most of us. I have an administrator sitting at home with their laptop, right? What is the requirement for them to be able to shadow user session on WVD? Because they cannot invoke direct RDP connection to the session host. How the Nerdio manager will help me to facilitate this?
Okay, so let me come back in detail, perhaps after the session. I don't have all the details right now, but I'll make sure to share them with all of you, of course. That's okay.
Yeah, sure, no problem.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Great, thanks.
So I mentioned in the beginning, and we had a look at what's happening under settings, and I also mentioned that sort of the default, the base configuration of Manager for WVD, but you're also able to reconfigure most of that on a per host pool basis, and that's what you do or can do under properties. So like I mentioned, also you can work with different AD configurations and different organizational units if that's something you would like to do. Let's quickly hop over a couple of them. This is just the load balancing mechanism, but the load balancing mechanism of the native service. So if you have a use case for that, you change that, you can do that as well. Properties VM deployment is a pretty cool one. So this has a ton of automation built in as well. And this is also where, for example, scripted actions come into play, which I just showed you. So here you would be able to select the scripted actions you would like to apply to your host pool, for example. And as you can see, too much to go into detail now, but a lot of other nifty features and gems, as I like to call them, built in here also. Availability zones is, of course, a very nice one, together with the GPU drivers and so on and so forth. Some custom PowerShell code, if that's something you would like to use, and so on. Properties, RDP settings, also a nice one to get to. So these will apply to your session settings, of course. There are a lot more, so the more advanced ones, if you will know exactly what it is that you are configuring, easy to get to, easy to change, and directly applicable to your host pool in this particular case. Tagging, like I mentioned, tagging resources, but then from within Manager for WVD, and of course these will be visible on the native Azure platform also. FSLogix, also something that I mentioned at the beginning. Do not use it, do use it. If it's set to use defaults, which it will have set by default if you open this up for the first time, then it will use your configuration settings set under settings. But of course, you can diverge from that as well, use a different storage location, for example, use different registry options, and so on. Let me see, the various monitoring solutions can be configured, turned on, turned off per host pool also. And like I mentioned, session time limits with regards to idle times, disconnected session times. As you can see, a lot to choose from, more than enough, and a couple of other things you might want to consider. All right, we had a look at users and roles, notifications. This is now coming with the next release as part of this, well, this week, hopefully. So conditions, you can basically set anything you would like with regards to targets. So tenants, workspaces, host pools, configure the ones that you would like to monitor more specifically, where you would like to be alerted on. As you can see, basically everything that can happen within Manager for WVD, run by everybody, or something more specific, and also the statuses you would like to be notified on. And that starts, by the way, with I think it's here on the Nerdio, so email notifications, link mailbox, and then you will be able to select that specific user that you enabled here under notifications as well. We had a look at loggings, settings, of course, multiple times, updates, also not unimportant because, like I mentioned, we come out with multiple versions, sometimes even multiple times per month, and at least multiple versions per year, at least once per month even. The newest one will always be on top, and as you can see, 2.8.0 is now the one you are seeing here, and this will be released later this week. So we will always show you the last 3 ones, and this, by the way, is public information. So this will now, this is the current version, 2.7, but we always, about a week beforehand, sometimes even a bit longer than that, we will show you what's coming up as part of the new version. So again, this is just our public Zendesk page dedicated to Manager for WVD. Also sort of the first line of help desk support, if you will, together with all of the icons within the solution itself. It holds a ton of KB articles, videos, and all those types of things. So very handy to have that around as well. With regards to integrations, let me see. This is now being worked on. MSIX AppAttach also is part of the new solution, or it has been part of Manager for WVD for a few months now. But the workings has changed a little. So first you would need to link storage, and this would need to be an Azure Files share, which of course, if you don't have any, is easy to configure using the wizard I showed you guys earlier. If you've done that, you can hop over to MSIX AppAttach and upload any existing images you might already have with working MSIX AppAttach packages. Or if you have existing MSIX apps, we can transform them into MSIX AppAttach packages or images as well by uploading them right here, or if you have an existing one that already works, it would work like this. And image versioning, so you can go back various versions in time, for example, and set it as default. That's also optional. And then assigning those apps to a host pool, MSIX AppAttach, and then it would work like this. So the image library, that would be if you've added those MSIX AppAttach packages within Manager for WVD, so starting out with the storage location, for example, or if it's external, you can do that as well, as you can see. Select the packages, add them, and so on and so forth. All right, so that's basically what I wanted to show you guys around Manager for WVD. I saw a few text messages pop up. Perhaps we would like to spend some time on Manager for MSP, or are there any questions at this time or anything else?
Yes, Bas. So we've got Cameron asking us, so what assistance support would an MSP get from Nerdio on behalf of a customer?
Oh, sure, yeah. So first of all, and that applies to Manager for WVD as well, we would do the installation and so on and so forth together. We have various onboarding engineers within Nerdio as well. You will get one assigned, so we will definitely help you to onboard one or multiple customers. But you know, we try to make it as easy as possible. So probably once you've seen it once or twice, you will be able to do that yourself as well. And of course, we are available within Europe and within the US for direct support via email, for example. We often hop on a quick call. We have the online support and so on and so forth. So yeah, any way you want to be helped, we can, basically. Does that answer your question, or did you mean something else? Or more specific, perhaps? Okay.
I think that was the question. Yeah. He says okay. Yes, you answered it. So awesome. No, that's a very good question, Cameron. So yep. Thanks for that. And so, yes, thank you as well. Go on.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, I wanted to mention as a final note, because we had this question, of course, somewhere in the beginning, the first 50 minutes, I mentioned Manager for MSP. This has been released, 2.5, 3 weeks ago during NerdioCon, which will be a 2-day conference coming back yearly, which we now had for the first time. So, and as you can see, it looks a bit different. Well, a bit different. It's not that different, actually. Well, let me hop over to the good part. So from an architectural point of view, this is sort of the same thing as with Manager for WVD, as I showed you guys before as well. It will be deployed from the Azure Marketplace, available within all regions and so on. So same rules apply there. As you can see, this is also built out of various platform as a service services. So again, extremely flexible. Also from a development point of view, we've come out with new releases now weekly since it has been released. So I think 3 or 4 releases already. And we will continue to do so during the public preview period for the next couple of weeks, couple of months even. We expect it to go GA near the end of April, probably. That's sort of the goal for now. But we already have multiple companies using it now in production, because what we did is we took the best of the products that we already have and put that in to Manager for MSP. So like multi-tenancy, the ability to manage infrastructure as a service VMs and autoscale those as well. All of the goodness that I just showed you around WVD, the automation part, around being able to integrate with various other Azure services and so on and so forth. And this now comes together within Manager for MSP. So this will be deployed within your, as you can see on the screen as well, within your MSP tenant. And from there on, you will be able to connect up to as many other client customer tenants as you may need. Ton going on. So we have a whole separate thing on pricing, on cost reporting. We have a whole separate calculator telling you exactly, or helping you to calculate exactly what your price per month per user per WVD workspace will be, for example. Those types of things, including a lot of details. Of course, the management part is a very big pillar part of Manager for MSP, and of course optimization. We can do various autoscale things around, like I mentioned, infrastructure VMs, WVD VMs. That will be exactly the same, or is exactly the same as I showed you with the autoscaling part for hosted charity environment, personal assigned desktops, and so on and so forth. And also the customer deployment scenarios that we support as part of Manager for MSP. Well, basically all of them. You can start out with nothing and then have an existing or new environment up and running within 60 minutes. And as you can see, the more there already is, the less time it takes to onboard an existing customer environment, which would mean one of these two, for example. But I will also be able to perhaps show you guys 1 or 2 things. Let me see, NMM.
That's really impressive, Bas. So question on this, obviously it's automated running up the environments. How many like desktops at a time could you run up at once?
Provision,
is there a limitation
or manage?
Provision, yeah, I mean provisioning desktops.
Yeah, so basically limitless. I think you'll hit the Azure limits first, because it all happens on the physical virtual machines within the Azure data centers, of course. So I'm not aware of any hard limits. So I haven't seen any customer spinning up like 100 machines at the same time, for example, but I'm sure you can. It will just take a bit longer.
Okay. So on average, say 10 machines to spin them up. What's the average time it takes?
I would say between 15 to 20 minutes, and that depends a bit on the Azure region you are doing that in. time of day, how busy it is, and so on and so forth. Types of machines, perhaps even. Yeah. So that's also why we build in, for example, when you would like to re-image your machines, you can choose if you would like to do 5 or 10, 15, 20 at the same time. So let's say if a machine takes 15 or 20 minutes and you do 5 at the same time, you know, it will be 5 times as fast, basically. So that's sort of the thought behind that, of course, to save you a bit on time. Because we have very small deployments, but we also have very big deployments globally. I mean, with Manager for WVD and with Manager for MSP as well, by the way. So this is what that would look like from an MSP perspective, basically. Here you would have an overview of all of your customer environments. And if you would like to add one, simply add an account. And this is how you would connect up to an existing tenant of one of your customers, for example. So this is just your basic Azure wizard. And then depending on what already might be in place, of course, once you have connected, the account name will pop up. You can select your subscription. You can choose what you would like to do with regards to identity. And that's what I meant with depending on what is already or might already be in place. You make your selection, and then you can choose existing networks, configure a complete new network together with subnetting and things like that. Connect up to an existing Active Directory, create a new one, FSLogix storage. And this process will take up to 60 minutes, depending on, well, again, what already is in place or not. A couple of things we are still working on, like global images. So this would mean managing your images globally over all of your customer environments. So there might be situations where you would like to use the same image over multiple customer environments, so you don't have to go into every customer environment separately and do image management like I just showed you. That looks and works in exactly the same way as we had a look at just before, by the way, with a few exceptions here and there, but those will all be built in, while the things that are now still missing will be built in the next couple of weeks and months, of course. And this is the cost estimator I was talking about. By the way, if I'm out of time, just interrupt me and let me know. I can stop at any time, of course. So don't look at the pricing right now because it's not configured properly at this time. This is just for demo purposes, of course. But just to show you that you can basically fill in well, almost all of the details with regards to the deployment you might be working on for one of your customers. So how many users, what type of, as you can see, GPU pooled desktops, any one-to-one desktops, so personal assigned desktops, time to be used, CPU or user to CPU core ratio, those types of things, type of machines, how many hours, how many additional machines would you like to add. So these would be your IS VMs, basically configure them as well. Will have a direct impact on the pricing, of course. Do you already own licenses, or do you still need to purchase licenses? How many, what type of licenses, and so on and so forth. And of course, around CSP, if you would like to use reserved instances, some of the other options that we have built into the solution, like backups, for example, site-to-site VPNs temporarily, or perhaps even for a couple of years, if you would like to have it in a hybrid situation, FSLogix profiles, and so on and so forth. And this is under, well, constant development. That's probably not the correct word, but we have a couple of things that are being added in the next couple of weeks to this as well, making it even more complete. But the idea is you have a complete overview of all of your costs associated with that specific environment for one of your customers. You will have a breakdown of all of those costs. You can save it, you can go back and edit it, and so on and so forth. And then overall, just as with Manager for WVD, this is now being worked on. We now have the ability to invite external users, for example, and of course, the ability to give users within your own organization access to Manager for MSP, and multiple roles will be built in going forward as well. And accounts, just a quick overview on user management, for example. So this would be a specific environment of one of your customers that you would then log into like this. Then you would be able to do user management, group management, and so on and so forth. Let give it a few seconds.
Okay, yeah.
Take a sip of water in between.
Yeah, it's loading it now, but we do have a few questions coming again from Philip as well. But yeah, carry on, Bas. Maybe we can ask them a bit later.
Sure. So as you can see, user management, you can assign desktops right from here if that's something you would like to do, and a bunch of other stuff you can manage around the users directly from within this interface. So licensing groups, disabling, resetting, things like that. And the same applies to group. It sort of looks the same way. Very easy to edit an existing group, for example. Of course, to add in new groups in exactly the same way. You know, just a fancy shell on top of, well, Active Directory, the Azure platform, and so on and so forth. And this is what I showed you guys before as part of Manager for WVD. So this technology has been built over into Manager for MSP. And that's also why we, you know, tell companies use it in production. This has been production ready for over a year, together with the image management and things like AppAttach, which I showed you as well, is being worked on, will come soon. And of course, like I mentioned, we are also able to add in and manage the infrastructure as a service virtual machines as well, as you can see here. And then start it, even RDP into it if that's something you would like to do. Add in disks. This has all been finished. Resize the VM, also very handy to be able to do that from this interface as well. Of course, you can delete it. You can manage its IP address, for example. And auto-scaling, which is pretty cool also. Turn it on and then tell it what to do. For example, the VM size during daytimes might be, let's say, a more expensive machine. And then outside of work hours, which you can configure here, sort of the same thing as with the auto-scaling around the hosted shared environment that I showed you guys. You can tell it to power off that machine outside of work hours, or you can also tell it, well, perhaps I would like to turn it into a B series or a cheaper D series, for example, at night. So then it will still be operational. It will still do what it needs to do, being a web server, a file server, whatever the case may be, but it will have a little less compute power and so on. But of course, that won't be a bad thing during night. So yeah, just a couple of things I wanted to show you guys.
Yeah, that's very impressive, Bas. Thank you. So you can actually change the image on the fly as well. That's another very neat feature. So we had some questions here from Philip.
Sure. Thank you, Zane. But if I can ask, the pricing model, both options, the end customer version and the MSP version, what the model looks like, what are the numbers?
Yeah, so public information as well. Let me pop that up for you. Licensing.
Yeah, sorry, exploiting you here. I apologize.
Yeah, no problem. Just you know, so this would be Manager for WVD. By the way, we have the named user model and concurrent licensing. As you can see, pricing. Well, these are the prices, of course. A named user is every user applied to a host pool, or assigned to a host pool, I should say. And it doesn't matter if it's 1 or 20, 25, just still one license. And a concurrent license is every user being active using the WVD platform through Manager for WVD. And the way that we calculate this is at the beginning of each new month. We look back over the last 30 or 31 days, and then we take the highest number of concurrent use over that time, and those are the licenses that will be invoiced. So you will always be invoiced afterwards, and only for those licenses that you might have consumed. And of course, that applies to named users as well, but that's a more static number overall normally. But that can change also, and if it changes, you will only pay for, you know, the new number of assigned named users, for example.
Yeah.
And pricing is USD pricing, right?
Yes,
yeah, it is.
Yeah. So it's not converted to euros or British pounds or anything like that. It's just as it is here. Yeah.
Sure.
Yep.
And for MSP model, what's the model? Is this the same? Okay.
No. So MSP is $12 per desktop per month. So that means every user that makes use of a WVD resources, so an assigned desktop, published application, would mean a license. And here we work with the average over the month. So that means day 1 of the month, you will have 25 users making use of WVD resources, for example. The second day, 35, then perhaps only 10, and so on and so forth. And then we take the average at the end of the month.
Of those peak numbers? Daily peaks?
Yeah, also the daily numbers, yes.
Daily peaks being averaged out. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, understood. Okay.
Nice.
And then there is a customer account and okay. And with the underlying infra, you will probably have an estimate. I don't think it's going to be a considerable cost compared to the licensing cost, but obviously there is some componentry I need to run for Nerdio to function.
Yeah, good question. So a couple of things that are created amongst are an app service plan, a SQL database as a service, those types of things. So for manager for MSP, that will be around 125 euros if you keep it at default. But that's of course that you will use on a monthly basis. That's of course that you will use to manage multiple customers. So well, most say that's neglectable, if you will, but of course it's still something you need to take into consideration if you start out small. And for manager for WVD, it's if you leave it at default, it's around 225, 230 euros, just about. But then we always adjust the app service plan and together with the SQL database, because those are the most costly, if you will. And then you will come around 50 to 55 euros a month, something like that. It depends a bit on how busy the environment is and what happens, of course, but those are the numbers. And then we have something in between, of course. So we like to calculate with small, medium, and large. Large would mean the default installation. If you don't change it, you will be able to at least manage, let's say, 10,000 plus users and desktops and so on. If you set it to medium, it's like from 100 to 250 users. So sorry, large means 250 users and upwards, so up to 10,000. That's what I meant to say. Medium means from 100 to 250, and small means well, everything from a couple of dozen up to 100.
Yep, understood. No.
Right. Anything else I can help you guys with?
Very nice. So I had a question actually pop into my head, Bas. So this is obviously shell add-on to the current well, Azure, what's available from Microsoft. But talking about you know, the government cloud computing, Azure, is it also available for that particular government cloud for, you know, super secure environments where government needs to manage their virtual desktops?
Yeah, not at this time that I know of. I know we are working on that, but not at this time.
Yeah. Okay. So it's mostly enterprise kind of grade. Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Application at the moment. Yeah.
I'll make sure to let me write that down to check that up with my colleagues as well. So you will have a 100% true or false answer after the presentation. Well, I would say later today, but you will probably be, I'm not sure where you are located, but otherwise you'll see it in the morning.
Yeah, and so financial sector, say banks, financial institutions, did you see them, you know, picking up a little bit on definitely. That, on your service?
Yeah, so it's not really, we do all verticals basically. So it's not really limited to just healthcare or just corporate or everywhere where work needs to be done, where they would like to use the Azure platform, virtual desktops, WVD. That's where manager for WVD and the manager for MSP, of course, as well, can help for sure.
Right. Wow. Okay. Nice. Nice. Well, thank you. I'm out of questions.
My pleasure.
Maybe somebody else, guys. It's probably it's end of our official part, so we can. If your cameras are working, if you would like to turn them on, you can. And also audio, you could ask your questions by audio as well, if you like, guys. So any other points, any other questions to Bas? And thank you for all the questions you guys been asking so far. That was awesome.
Yeah, definitely.
Really good crowd here.
And I will make sure to follow up on some of the items that as I promised. So don't worry about that.
Yeah, no, thank you. No, that's been good. And well, yes, well, thank you to all attendees. I'll just share something then with our group. So thank you again, Bas, for presenting for us, for our community. It was really nice having you with us in our group. Really appreciate it. And so everyone else as well. Well, Philip, thank you so much as well for presenting the news, WVD news. So was also very much appreciated for your support of our community. You do always help us with running the community as well. So I just guys would like to quickly run. So with WVD user group being so busy lately with packed with action, I wanted to share what's coming up in the next few months in our ANZ. So with our group, so today we've got Bas with Nerdio Manager MSP for WVD, and we've got in March we've got WVD Connect Deploy Go with Liquid. So another Microsoft partner, Gold partner, who is developing solutions for automating WVD deployments. And in April, we'll have easy printing with WVD with eZip. So it's an Easy Blue, fully cloud managed printing solution as well. We were using a cloud console. And then in May, we've just scheduled a session today. Will be provided by Parallels RAS 18 for WVD. So we've got a lot more to come in the next few months.